Hi, everyone. This is the Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what it is they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of those imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Before we start the show, I wanted to mention that we do have a heart-based leadership boot camp that we're offering, and you can check that out at customerfanatics.com/boot-camp. Today, I am very excited to be speaking with Tammy Taylor, an amazing leader, and I hope you enjoy this one. Well, thank you for joining the Leadership with Heart podcast. This is Heather Young, your host. I'm so excited to have Tammy on the phone today. She is an amazing leader who works for an amazing organization. I had exposure to her because she actually had been following me a little bit on LinkedIn and engaging with me. And I could see by her comments that she really got it as a leader with heart. And after seeing and coaching and working with some of her team, I can see that they have a lot of respect for her in that regard. So welcome aboard, Tammy.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely happy to have you on. Just very tickled. So where are you right now in your leadership journey?
At this very moment, I am a leader of approximately a 1,300 person organization. And, people will say sometimes I lead, 1,200 or 1,300 people. I don't. I have 11 direct reports, and they are truly the people who lead the people within the rest of our organization. And so as a senior leader, what I do is most importantly kind of establish that vision for the part of the job that I am responsible for. And that is specifically the people development and the people leadership aspect. So having people own their careers, develop themselves as professionals, and us giving them the tools to do that, accomplish that. And then the second big bucket of responsibilities that I own are making sure that our projects are done appropriately according to the wishes of our sponsors, those who support the missions that we accomplish. So making sure that scope, schedule, budget, aspects of project management and discipline, and the acceptance of risk for the work that we do is done appropriately.
Love it. And now, so what is it, for most of us, there might be some one event or some culmination of events or people that kind of drive us to lead. What might be your reason to lead?
When I was a young staff member at my former institution, which was Los Alamos National Laboratory, I was deeply embedded in the research that I was doing. So I'm an engineer by background and training, education, but I've always been at the bench top. So thinking about the basic science as it flows into engineering solutions. And I found myself being efficient at being able to develop procedures and get other people, postdocs, students, technicians into the laboratory more seamlessly than I could find time myself to do it. I think that some of my supervisors recognized that and started pulling me into more leadership opportunities where I could, instead of doing procedure development, think about kind of strategy development. And I enjoyed that tremendously. So it wasn't a single event, it was several projects that I was working on that kind of culminated in this new approach of building strategy, developing strategy. I really enjoyed writing proposals. Not everybody enjoys writing proposals. And I was good at that. I'm good at writing. I'm good at speaking. And so when you're good at something, and I think that there are reward systems in place for recognizing that you have the opportunity to build on those talents. And I, in turn, try to really build that into what I do with the staff that I engage with, seeking out what they do best. That turns out to be my passion, is just kind of working at that staff development interface. And then the reward is seeing people succeed in their careers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've even seen like that development, working with your team, seen them kind of moving to different areas and growing. And I think that's really a big sign of a leader's. It's not that your people are staying put and just being like 100% loyal to you, but is that you are growing and developing them. They are flourishing to who they're meant, who they're supposed to be and what they're called to be. And you're kind of a catalyst for that, and maybe removing the barriers and obstacles along the way.
That's exactly right.
I love that. So how would you define, or maybe even how would your people define your leadership style?
I remember taking a Ken Blanchard course on situational leadership. It's actually their Situational Leadership 2 curriculum, and it really clicked with me. And so I hope that my direct reports see me as a person who is very adaptable to what they need specifically. So I am thrilled to be working with a group of people right now who are very autonomous. And the luxury of that is you can almost trust and then lightly verify and make sure that things are going the way that you expect them to go. So people who are on the very high end of that leadership development style. And then when you have someone who comes new into the position, making sure that they fully understand things, providing more time available to them, maybe weekly one-on-ones is usually how I start, so that people can get acquainted with the job through the lens of your expectations, my expectations for them. So I think that kind of encapsulates my leadership style. I really trust my people. They have to create a reason for me not to trust them. And try to be very responsive to what their specific and individual needs are.
Interesting. Oh, is there ever a time when when you think about who you are today and what the leader you developed into, is there ever a time, recent or in the past, where you just weren't really proud of maybe the leader you were at that time? Something that happened, some event specifically, where you were like, I wasn't the best version of myself. But how did you come out of that as well? Because as leaders, as we know, there's no destination here. It's a journey. We are moving along it. It's not a continuum. It's not straight line. But in the end, we kind of we develop these skills and these I guess preferences even for how we lead. But how did you come out of that situation or situations where you just said, I'm not the best, but I want to be the better self?
Yeah, so I'll cite a time period where I had been a leader, and I came out of that experience into something more of an individual contributor role at an agency, a prestigious agency. And so I was working for them. And during that time period, there was a product that I was responsible for. And as I was creating that product, I was very personally invested in it, right? So I think that I was prideful in the development of that and really thought of it as being a best-in-class product. And two senior people within that organization were not as pleased with it as they needed to be to endorse it and release it out into the larger community. And so we went through a lot of iterations in the development of that. And I didn't have an appreciation, and I grew quite frustrated during that process because I really thought that it was spot on. I had been working with a community intensely to build it, and I was not only representing my ideals, I was representing their ideals. And they very patiently for months just continued to iterate with me through this process. And yes, they grew frustrated with me, seeing my increasing frustration. And I remember being at this point where I was just really about to snap and maybe throw in the towel relative to it, right? That if it wasn't going to be the product that we envisioned it to be, then it just wasn't what the community wanted. And I remember having this, I call them mirror moments, where I just sat down and went, okay, what is it that is not allowing this to go forward? And I had to admit to myself that I was contributing, probably the major contributor to the problem. And so I sat down and approached it a little differently with the two individuals and tried to understand with their deep expertise what it was that they were concerned about in the release to the community, and just had that aha moment of, oh my gosh, I'm the roadblock here. And so we worked through it. I took their wisdom and imparted that on tailoring what we needed to do to deliver the product. And within, I would say, 3 or 4 weeks, we were able to resolve everything and get it released and out into the public venue. And it was a better product. And I learned a lot about that experience from myself, just making sure that I don't drink my own Kool-Aid and decide that that's the best Kool-Aid that there is out there and there's no other Kool-Aid. And really, from the beginning of a process, have a true appreciation for what it is that the sponsor wants in the context of the deliverable, so it doesn't become too tainted by internal processes and biases. And then, listen. I think that since that time period, I've been a much better listener.
Interesting. I can, this situation happens. It happens actually a lot on my podcast where we talk about this, and a lot of times when we're not the best leader, it is that time where we get so stuck, right? And that this is the right way and this is the best way. And like you said, drinking from our own Kool-Aid. I love that phrase anyway. I think that we get to that point, and it's just so hard, like our pride, our ego. And here's the thing, as leaders, the more senior you get, the more successful you are. The ego doesn't get smaller. It's just that we have to learn how to put it in check, because we can't even get to the places where you're, executive leaders if you don't have an ego. You have to have an healthy ego. Right. So it's having that balance.
Yeah. And I feel so lucky to have had that experience, because I learned so much from it, and I reference it, multiple times a year in my career. But the thing is that the two individuals that I was dealing with were people that I deeply respected and liked. And so when I oftentimes run into issues with peer colleagues or subordinate colleagues who are having a similar challenge, a lot of times they don't like or respect the person that they're challenged with. And I think that that's an even harder situation. So I'm grateful that I like the individuals that I was trying to partner with. But I have a deep empathy and appreciation for people when they go through this similar challenge, because this is a career challenge you're going to have multiple times, but you don't like or respect the person that you're dealing with. So that's an even tougher challenge.
It really is. Because then, in that situation, what I've found myself doing in that situation is I'm trying really hard to dig deep and figure out what's driving them and what may be driving their doubt in the process, my suggestion, my recommendation, trying really hard to take the emotion out of it so that it's not about me, because for me, initially it'll be about me. And so I have to kind of take myself out of the picture, create an objective picture of what is actually happening, and then reinsert kind of the two people in there and go, okay, now how can we do this differently? What might be going on in their mind? And I kind of dissect it that way, with the focus on those people, and then be able to try to go back to them and say, now, what is it that I need to give to them for them to feel comfortable? What is it that I'm missing? But it's a lot of, I think it's a deconstructing process for me. Because I have to peel myself out of it. So given the fact that your organization is so large, because, even though you don't directly lead the 1,200, 1,300 people, they're still under your leadership. And so, what do you do to connect when things get crazy? And things are always crazy. What am I talking about? You guys are very, very busy there. But when you know that you need to reconnect with your direct reports, or even just feeling disconnected from your organization, how do you reconnect with them in a deeper way?
Well, I think there's different levels of that. So I'll start first with the people. So I think it is important for myself, my boss, who in our case is an associate laboratory director, and my direct reports, to have that connection to our staff. And we each have a variety of tools that we use to get in touch with staff. So for me personally, I have a lunch forum where I buy lunch for people in teams of 8 or less on topical subjects of interest inspired by the staff. so they can propose anything and gather like-minded people or a diverse-minded set of people to come together on that topic, and we hash it out over lunch together. My favorite thing to do, which I don't have enough time to do with great frequency, is getting out into the field and seeing their laboratory work, the office environments where they perform their duties, cyber laboratories, just kind of getting out in the field and seeing things, attending group meetings. So just spending time. Staff always have questions about what vision is being set at the executive leadership level, what kind of strategy is being developed. So just being able to have time to communicate about those things. I have a weekly message that I send out every Friday afternoon that touches all of our staff. And during the 4 years that I've been doing that, I have individual conversations with staff. I respond personally to every response that they may provide to those things. I make sure that they come out from my inbox. And in any given week, there are on average only 3 or 4 of those individual type responses, something that touches somebody that they want to make a comment on. And so I try to find ways to connect personally. And it may be only 15 or 20 staff that you touch on any individual week, but your relationship is built from that. They know that they have access to me for the time periods that they really need me, and they don't abuse that access. They're very respectful of it. Then there's what I term kind of skip level reports, the people who are one step away from reporting to me. And I try to create opportunities during the course of the year for us to have formal and informal engagements such that that relationship, that door is understood to be open. And then finally, the direct reports, we have more formal and informal opportunities to engage. We take a lot of, I'll call it pride in making sure that celebrations of special achievements of significance are made throughout the year. And me and my direct reports play a hand in creating those opportunities, stewarding the opportunities, and then making sure that people are recognized in those opportunities. And you combine that, the other end of the spectrum is, the either monthly or biweekly one-on-ones, depending on what people request for direct access to me, and an open door policy where they know that, yes, my schedule is booked, sometimes double booked, but they're the highest level priority, and those other things will go away so that they can bring whatever issues they need to bring forward to my attention. So.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's good. I mean, what I appreciated about that, and where I find the gap is in most organizations. So in every organization I talk to, it's like, listen, communication is a problem no matter where you go. Whoever's complaining about communication, I'm like, I have never seen an organization that gets this right. Not 100% of the time. There's some that are stronger than others. Maybe individuals in the organizations that are stronger. What I appreciate what you just outlined is that, number one, you have a plan. Can you always execute against it? Sometimes not, but that there is a plan. And many organizations don't have communication strategies and plans that they put in place, and they don't have a way to measure whether they're even complying with their plan. But what good is a plan if you're not actually, number one, executing on it and measuring against it, right? And so I think it's good that you have that plan in place and you're doing your very best to execute against it. It just means a lot, because that's the thing that I see the most on employee engagement surveys. The feedback is that it kind of like you alluded to, that when you get into the field, they want to know the vision, they want to know the strategy. The staff want to have a deep connection. They want to have a connection to the executive leadership. They want to have a connection to the mission of the organization, to their coworkers. They want to know a lot, and we don't give them nearly enough. And so there's this void that exists there when we don't give them what it is they need in that regard, as far as information. It kind of gives them security. It makes them safe to know what's happening. Yeah. Right?
That's exactly right. Yep.
So
you want to have an identity that matches the identity of the place where you're coming and spending the bulk majority of your time every week.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we spend that time there, and people can't stand when you say like work is family, because obviously family is family. But there is this kind of idea in the workplace of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where they have these foundational needs that they have as it relates to their boss and their organization and their team members and the people they spend all that time with, and the executive leaders who are kind of like these, you know, parenting authorities to a certain extent. It's kind of strange to say that, but when you see the interaction between employer, employee, and leader and staff member and things like that, there are certain expectations there, and there's a level of safety in the workplace that's not necessarily safety from a physical sense, but kind of an emotional sense that comes from that relationship. I know I just went pretty deep on us,
Absolutely.
but
No, absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. We reference Maslow's hierarchy a lot here in our culture. And when we emphasize the importance of it, if someone's at the very bottom of that hierarchy, they can't think creatively about the other parts of that triangle. They're thinking only about that security aspect.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and we have to look at it more holistically. And I know, being in a large organization like you have, you can control what you can control, and you can try to influence the other things.
Right.
But luckily, again, you oversee not quite a third, but at least 25% of the organization almost. And so, knowing that you have that kind of, I guess, the ability to impact those people in a positive way by the processes, the systems, the communication, the things that you're doing, super helpful, I'm sure, to them. So.
Right.
So for those who are listening, leaders that might be listening that maybe, are in large organizations or not, and they are just might be struggling in their leadership. There's just, you might have some challenges, maybe even have some of the challenges you talked about earlier. What would be maybe a last tip that you'd like to share with them, that you think is just so important as it relates to that evolving leader of today?
Well, gosh, the first thing that comes into my mind is a dear friend of mine gave me a plaque, and I keep it over my front door, and it says, "Live with passion." I think that you have to make sure that your passion is kindled as a leader, and that if something is nagging at you, you use the term struggling, you're struggling with something, really figure that out. Some of the issues that you're struggling with may be surmountable, and some of them may be insurmountable. It could be a time for a change for you. It could be a time for a change for your organization. There might be people who are reporting to you who have just become a clay layer and aren't listening any longer. Be courageous in tackling those problems that you're struggling with. Don't acquiesce to just accepting them and becoming a status quo. That's where the live for passion thing kicks in for me. Don't beat your head against the wall continuously, because it changes you, and oftentimes not for the better, right? Go back to the story of me kind of beating my head against a wall for months in the development of that product, and just being the clay layer, right? Think honestly, hold the mirror up to yourself and understand where your imperfections are, and you're never going to be perfect. So how do you either deal with those imperfections or attune them to be better in the ecosystem that you're in? But just don't acquiesce to what you have. Be courageous and make the changes that are necessary, or inspire the changes that are necessary.
Oh, I love that. Don't acquiesce. I love it. And I love this idea of holding that mirror up. There are times when I can think of in my leadership journey that is continuous and never ending, where I maybe didn't look in the mirror enough, and instead like shown it on some other people. And instead I should have really turned it on myself. And after the fact, probably, much later, I find that most of my emotional intelligence happens after the fact. It's not, sometimes the self-awareness isn't always there. And I'm after the fact, I'm going, maybe I should have done this. And so I like the fact of you saying, shine that mirror in you. And also when you're getting to the point where you just hit your head against the wall too much and you shouldn't be doing that, to just say what, self-evaluate. So I think that's an amazing tip to leave the listeners with. Hopefully you've got a lot out of this. Tammy is a great leader. And so Tammy, if there's a way that, I know that you've got some moving going on here soon, but is there a way that if someone wanted to get a hold of you, they could do that? Maybe one way?
Absolutely. Yeah. So LinkedIn is probably the best and most reliable way. I check it frequently and keep it up to date. And so LinkedIn profile is found under Tammy Palmer Taylor. So Palmer was my middle name, and I wanted people to be able to find me before the great career that I've had as well. And so that's probably the very best way. I don't have a Twitter account, but I have the LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on here and sharing that deep, deep wisdom and even that in the story with us. All of those stories really help to sometimes heal us because we're going through the same things, and it gives us some great ideas. But it also makes us realize that, again, leadership is not about perfection. It's a constant journey. It's about consistent, improvement and reflection, as you talked about. And so I definitely appreciate you being on. For those who...
You're so welcome.
Yes. And for those who want to get a hold of Tammy, you'll see, I'll have the link to her information on the show in the show notes if for some reason you didn't quite get the LinkedIn address. But thank you for listening in. And don't forget too, that if you love this podcast, to rate and review it on iTunes or wherever you listen. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.